Recording in progress.
Okay, so let's go ahead and share. Here, all right, so you should be seeing Brightspace now. And if we scroll to ITS 372, all right, so if we go to 372 and take a look at content here. All right, so you can see we've covered intro. So that's a homework assignment that's due today. So make sure you submit that. And then after that, we have this. So I need to update this. There's going to be some problems. So if you click on this Word document, I think I've already, yeah. So problems 2 and 3, they were already discussed in class on Tuesday. So it's discussed in class, write a script to iterate through the entire file system and find the path of all files containing a particular input string, right? So that's one problem. The other problem, number 3, as discussed in class, write a script to iterate through the entire desktop folder for your user and replace a particular word in the file with an input word of your choice, okay? So that's great. And then the third problem that we're going to work on is problem 1. So I have to give you a little bit of information for that one today. So basically, write a Python script. So I'm muting your microphones. All right, so number 1, write a Python script to gather 10 pieces of information from the operating system, such as uptime, the name, disk space used, and we will be using subprocess for that. So this command over here. So I'll go over that command today, but basically the idea with this script is that this would be a nice little script that you could run every time that you just want to see how the operating system is performing. Okay, and that can be several tasks. Okay, so you're gonna basically use this module in Python to be able to interact and run commands. So the idea with this subprocess.call is that you're literally the way that you type the commands on the terminal, basically you can put them in Python and then they'll run automatically. Okay, so that's the basic idea here with this one. Okay, so let's go ahead then and practice those today. And then if you want to just read more about Python in general, like if you feel you want like a little quick tutorial. I don't know. If you want to just a quicker tutorial, you can take a look at this one. Just it gives you a quick introduction to some of the ideas in Python and how it works, some of the main functions and modules, operations. So you can think of it as a cheat sheet and just take a look at how, what's available, okay? And then, so I would certainly recommend that you read through this document. I'm not going to go through it as this is not a Python class, right? So that's your 140 class, but certainly if you want a little refresher, right, take a look at this one and the ideas in it should be pretty useful. Okay, but this is not homework, just, it's kind of for your own information. Read through it. Certainly it's got a lot of interesting ideas in there. Okay, so anyway, that's the document. So let's go back to, all right, so I've talked about everything and then I have to create this assignment. So this, I'm going to delete this one actually. Because I copied these from last year. anyway, I'll add a new assignment once we finish the example. All right, so if we go back to the table of contents here, go back to the table of contents. So this is the current module. Next week, we will look at this module, services and tools for system administration. So this, we'll start taking a look at a lot of things. I've got some, so basically we'll start with the Unix way. It's kind of a, you know, the philosophy of Unix, if you will. And then you have some slides for your own reading. And then of course you'll have some assignments and things like that. So, but that's next week. So I'll worry about that. Okay. So today then let's go ahead and focus on wrapping up. So although we will always be doing scripting every week, you know, this week was more scripting heavy just because I'm kind of introducing scripting as a topic. But as we start moving into other topics like the file system, etc., then, you know, we'll be doing scripting, but I'm not going to emphasize that as the topic itself, right? It's just going to be how you do things. So certainly make sure you do these exercises and also practice the Linux commands so that you're comfortable with them. All right, so let's then go ahead and open the virtual machine. So let me minimize this. Let me start the VM. Also, I was told by Donna that if you're before February, that if you want to get VMware, you really need to try to get it as soon as possible because there's something going on with the license. So it might be good to just talk to her about what she means. All right, so let me share this document. Okay. So you should be seeing the virtual machine now. All right, so I'm going to maximize this one. Let's open up. So you should be seeing the virtual machine. Yep. And we are on the terminal. So I'm going to open up the terminal here. Okay. And now we are going to navigate to 372.2022. So CD ITS 372.2022. If you remember, we've done a few scripts already, right? And you should be able to do those now. Let's go ahead. All right, so we talked about we practiced sysargs, we practiced the passwd file, we practiced ranges, we practiced directory listing. Okay, so we're done with all those. We also look at splitting and replacing. All right, so now let's take a look at how can we collect data from the operating system and run commands from Python. Now, if you did bash, in the bash scripting language, literally all you have to do is put in the command as you would put it here. You just put it in the script. In Python, you can't really do that exactly. So we're going to do use a module called Subprocess. So let's call this one run Linux commands. .py. Okay, so we're going to create this script. And so now I'm going to do, I'm going to call this, give it a message here. I'm going to say a system, let's call it a system information gathering script. Okay. So then the goal here is to run commands. So it's very easy, actually. We just have to call a library called import subprocess. So I'm going to bring in subprocess, just like that. And then once I have subprocess, I can call it. So I'm going to do subprocess dot call, like that. And then this function basically takes a list of parameters. So then I can say, for instance, here, command, right? And then we're just going to define command to be a list, like that. And so now we're going to think of some commands that we can run on Linux. So for instance, a simple example might be ls, but ls can take a parameter like ls-l, right? So if this works, we should be able to see the directory listing. So I'm going to do Control X, Y, enter. And now I'm going to run the script. Python run Linux commands, Python 3. And there it is. See, it worked because it gave me the directory listing. So it's pretty handy. Now, another thing we can do is, for instance, we can do the sysargs, right? So if you remember, import sys, and then we can do a sys.args. What is it? argsv? Yeah, so sysargv. One, right? And then we can do b sys.argv 2, right? And now we have our command. So instead, we can just plug in here A and B. Okay, so now I'm going to try this one again, Control X, Y. And now I have, let's clear. Now I can do, but I have to provide parameters. So I'm going to say ls-l, and you can see it runs. Now, this is not so useful, you might imagine, because why just do this, right? So, but it just kind of shows. So it's not really for that purpose. The purpose would be if you had a list of commands, and then now you're going to generate a whole bunch of things that you don't have to type, that you want to run in specific computers. We're going to learn in 2 weeks that we can put scripts in the system and then use something called the cron tab, which is the scheduling system for Linux, to tell it, okay, that's a fun week actually when we're looking at cron, because we can learn the language of the cron tab in Linux, and we can just schedule all kinds of things in the operating system. So I can tell the operating system, hey, you know what? Today's Thursday. So, Saturday at 3 a.m., run this script. And this script, gather all the information, boom, finish, generate a report, boom, and send it to me via email. all the work done automatically, and you had nothing to worry about, right? And you're going to impress a lot of people by doing it. So we're going to take a look at some of those things as we go forward, and certainly cron is very useful for that, and it's the built-in Linux facility for that, so that's really good. All right, so anyway, let's do a few more. Okay, so the idea here would be that I have some commands that I want to run. So let's do, I mean, I'm just going to play with this a little bit, to be honest, and then I'll create a problem for you to do. So let's do Control X, Y, run it. And it works, comes out differently because it doesn't have the flag. Before I continue, I guess, were there any questions, guys? No? Nope. So the other idea that we can try here is commands. So commands could be something like ls, comma, what else? What's the command? pwd. That's a good one. What's another one? Uptime. You guys tell me, you just did the homework, right? You should know. df is a good one too. df gives you the file system information. I don't know if I put that one on. It's a good one. Who am I? You can see I'm just putting in Linux commands, just a few. So now we can create a for loop for my command in commands, right? Commands is the list. Oops. Colon 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're going to say subprocess dot call, like that. Right now, another thing that you might want to consider is where does the data go, right? So you might want to consider how to save the data into a text file, because it's great and all that it would give you this information and print it on the terminal, but if you're remote, and you know we're all remote now, right? In the world, you can just expect it to become more like that because it's cheaper. So think about how you're going to be at home, and instead of having to worry about going to the office and checking the routers or the computers, etc., all the computers are going to report back to you, right? And you know, just run the cron tab, run the scripts, but you still need to generate a file, send it, right? So you'll have to think about that. So in here now, we have each my command, and we're going to run it. So they're probably going to be elements, not lists. So I'm thinking we're going to need to make this into a list. But let's try this one. Control X. So Python is always changing. Let's do this one. I anticipate this will give me an error. Great. Oh no, it works. See, this is what I was saying. So Python always fixes itself. So now it's not even necessary to provide the list, right? So you can see here, I ran the script. This is ls. This is pwd. This one I think is uptime. This is df, the file system. So it's telling me basically I'm using 17% of my space here. Let's see what else. And I am C. I'm logged in as C. So as you can see, I was able to run this command to look at various things. Are there any questions about what I did, guys?
Can you show your code one more time? Oh, never mind. Never mind.
There it is. All right, so let's try now. What if I want something that has a flag? So let's do uname -a, right? So I want the name of the operating system. So let me try that one. So Control X, Y, clear. And it errored out. No such, so uname -a, didn't like that. Let me try one more. So we'll have to figure that one out. So I know for sure this will work. I mean, this command is correct. So let's. Yeah, so it doesn't like it when you have the command and the flag. Now, what can we do to solve this particular little problem? So one suggestion that might come to mind is to do this. Do a list of lists, right? So now, because it's expecting a list, I'm going to do ls, right? And comma -l. And now let's see if it accepts a list and then the other ones as strings, because that would save me a lot of typing. Yeah, so I forgot the quotes. And it took it. See, it didn't mind that one. So then that's a good thing, because then all I'm going to do is change the last one to be a list as well. So it accepts, you know, combine things in the list. These are strings. This is a list, you know, it's like, I don't care. So that's good. So uname, comma, -a. So this is pretty easy. Now I'm just doing some commands. Obviously, you have to find some interesting commands for information gathering. So I'll give you some suggestions, but let's run it. And there it is. It worked. So this time around, if you notice, it ran the ls-l command here. It runs the other ones. And at the end, it ran the uname. Uname basically gives you, as you saw in the homework assignment, the operating system name, okay, which is Ubuntu, etc. So the idea then here is to be able from the program to run commands. Okay, so let's try a few other things. So let's import OS. Okay, so now OS, I'm going to put this towards the bottom. Let's see what else we can do. Did I do df? Yeah. So df -h, I want to add that. And I'm going to put it somewhere in the middle here. df -h. All right, test it out, just make sure it runs. Yeah, and this one, you know, provides the information of the operating system as well. There it is. All right, so a few other things that we can try out, since we're kind of trying to see how we can manipulate the operating system through the script. As I said, what I want you to understand is that you can do pretty much anything that you can manually do on the terminal. You can just automate with either Bash or Python or Perl or one of the scripting languages. That's really important. You know, that's one of the key things of sysadmin, really. If you think about the book, you know, you have to understand how Linux works and, you know, the file system. And obviously you guys take a lot of networking classes and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, whether it's the networking side or the OS side, sysadmin is, you know, running these commands, right? The idea, the philosophy of the book, if you will, especially the more like managerial book, if you read through the whole thing is really about like automation and in the system. So let's try a few things. So here, I'm gonna do subprocess dot call, and I'm just gonna comment this out for now, okay? So I'm not gonna use it because I'm gonna focus on this. So here I'm gonna run a list PWD. Just want to see where I am. Then I'm gonna call the OS module OS dot, and I'm gonna say change directory. Okay, and then I'm gonna call subprocess again, call, and I'm gonna check PWD again. So the idea being to show that I can change. Okay, what's this question? Yes, sure. Yeah, that's fair enough. Sorry. I sometimes just like I'm having, you know, I just become focused on the program. So yeah, I'll pause for a second so that you guys can write it down. I'm gonna move this one down here and just let me know. Get the script and let me know when you've got it. Yeah, all right, good. So I am recording it, so you can always check the video as well. But yeah, so good. So I'm glad you got it. Let me know. So today I'm not gonna do full lecture today, just doing a little bit, and then I'll leave some time so that, you know, if you guys have any questions about anything, we can go through them. But here, this is the example I was working through, right? As you know, so we've got the operating system, as I said, and I just want to make calls to the operating system and see what happens if we change directory. So I'm going to go ahead, save it. Now I'm going to run it. Missing required argument. Okay. So then change directory to change directory to, let's try TMP. Right, run it. All right, and you can see we ran the script. Now if I run pwd, you know, we're still in the ITS 372, but as while the program was running, you can see that it changed directories from the desktop directory to the temp directory. The temp directory is basically the, you know, in the file system, it's a directory, so we can go there, TMP, and you can see here, there's some files in here, usually files that are only temporary. You can see in pwd, it shows that. To return to the folder that we were in, we're gonna do root home seed desktop, right? Clear ls-l, and then in here, cd its 372 spring 2022 ls-l, and there it is. Okay, so currently we are working on run Linux commands. So I'm going to go to nano commands, and there we are. All right, so these are just, again, the focus for this was just to do some of these. Some of these commands. Okay. Just making sure I covered everything. Okay. Thanks. All right, great. So are there any questions about this script before we move on? No? Okay, so I'm gonna just go, let's switch to Brightspace. And I'm gonna add the problem, as I said. So I'm gonna add the problem here to so this document, I'm just going to modify a little bit. So let me download it. So let's change the focus to, so I should be sharing the Word document now. Right, and this is the three problems, right? So in this one, oh, I think it was already updated. So now that you understand the example that I just did, basically it just says, write a Python script to gather 10 pieces of information from the operating system, such as, but of course, these are the examples that I did today. So it's gotta be different ones, such as users logged in, RAM usage, CPU, GPU usage, and more. Okay, and you can use the following. So I leave it to you guys, 10 pieces of information about the operating system. So it's kind of you have to kind of look for things, different commands. So basically the way that I would approach this is find 10 Linux commands, right, that relate to, if you're a sysadmin, things that you want to know, metrics about the operating system. So write a Python script to gather 10 pieces of information from the operating system. I'll say here, e.g., metrics, right? And then I put in there such as users logged in, RAM usage, CPU, GPU usage. At some point in the semester, we're going to learn of historical or traditional protocols, right? Protocols for monitoring and network management. So there's actually a lot of them. Historically, SNMP has dominated. There's a lot of solutions by Windows and so on, various companies, Spiceworks, etc. They all want to sell you a product that provides monitoring of some kind. But we're just going to explore the protocols and then basically how a lot of that could be done via Linux. All right, so that's basically this assignment. You can use the following. So I'm going to just save it. Are there any questions about the 3 problems? So I think that it should be pretty clear, but are there any questions? It doesn't sound like there's any questions. So let's go ahead and just go back to Brightspace. And I need to delete this one, right? And just add the modified one. Now I'm going to add that document from downloads. Okay, add it. So you should have it there. Minimize it, maximize it. Click on this just to make sure it's the updated file. All right, great. So there they are. So now I'm just going to add the link. All right, so just so that everything is clear, I'm going to add the new assignment. I'm going to call this info gathering problems. This will be due, so today is the 20th. So this will be due on the 27th by 10 p.m. It'll stay open. It'll open today. Stay open until 29th. All right, so I'm just going to say complete for 3 problems in the attached Word. This should be clear, correct? Should be pretty clear. All right, great. So now that that's settled, let's go ahead and work through some additional examples. These are going to be a little bit more advanced, but they are not homework yet. Okay, so we're just going to keep going kind of in the ideas, right? So I'm going to close this now, the link, and we're going to switch back to the virtual machine. So you should be seeing the virtual machine. I'm going to go ahead here and close. I'm going to go ahead and close the script. All right, so I'm going to do clear here. And we are ready to take it to the next level, right? So we're going to do more interesting, more advanced topics. So some of the topics, and I won't finish today, but some of the topics that we're going to cover are sockets. We're going to cover the OS module and file permissions. Remember that access control, as I said, is central to Linux. We will be talking about that all semester. So today I'm just going to, or in the next discussions, we're going to be talking about sockets, the OS module for file permissions. You're going to get a more complex problem called the cuckoo's egg probably next week. I believe I have that case already posted. But today, I'm just going to continue doing some basic Python basics, list dictionaries, and the try-catch in particular. The try-catch is something that we're going to need for, because, you know, when you're running something repetitively, right? You're running something repetitively, and then there's a little hiccup, let's say somewhere in the middle, and it's already processed 2 hours. You don't want to lose everything. Okay, so since we don't want to lose everything, we're going to learn this little structure called the try catch, or the try except, as it's sometimes also called. Okay. All right, so let's get started then with just a few little examples here and there. All right, so the idea with this is, you know, just to kind of make it more fun and interesting. Do you guys know what Nmap is? Are you guys aware of Nmap? Familiar with Nmap?
Yep.
Okay, great. So Nmap is a port scanner, right? So it sends packets, it checks for open ports, and so on. So you've taken a look at that one. So we're going to try to build our own little port scanner. Okay. So I'm going to create script my port scanner.py. All right, and we're going to say here, for instance, you know, we can have a list of ports. Right, and we can have a list of IPs. For you to test this scanner, now this, you know, I strongly recommend that you do this in your own network environment, right? So you should never try to scan things like in a network, in a real network, certainly not in the school's network or at your place of work, or if you live in like apartments and dorms where you share wireless. Do not do that, please. This is all, you know, should be in a control environment like in your VM environment, okay? All right. So what are port numbers? Who can tell me that? I'm sure you know what IPs are, but what are port numbers?
It's like the number you use on a computer to classify a service.
Very good. Exactly, very good. So what that means is that whenever you have an operating system and you start a service, like something called Apache, right? So whenever you start Apache, that service, that daemon as it's called, which we will learn about next week, is running in the background. It doesn't need a terminal. Instead, it's just running in the background, but it has a purpose. It makes the operating system, that server, into a specific type of server called a web server. And then now you have that server is expecting requests for websites, okay? So if it is expecting requests for websites, it needs to have a way to be waiting for the connection, right? So, and that's gonna be tied to the port number. The port number is basically an opening in the operating system you know, and it's waiting for for data to come in through that port. Okay, so for instance, operating systems have about 65,000 or so port numbers, and that they can open. Some are dedicated, like port 80, port 22, etc. Others are available for them for outgoing connections that they can just automatically and on the fly create. So let's think about that, right? So, you know, I'm going to create a list of some port numbers, 22, 23, 25, right? What is it? 443, some of the common ones, right? Next week, also, we're going to learn about services, and you're going to go into the Linux operating system and look for these, right? So you're going to get a list of services, and you have to kind of identify, oh, this is port so-and-so, this is port so-and-so. So you'll go into the operating system for that. So let's just think a little bit through what we're doing here. So we're going to take, let's say a port 21, right? And this would be a what? FTP service, right? So we have that. Now, let's just quickly say, I want to know what type of variable port is. So what I can do is, and actually I'm going to create another thing called banner. Oops, sorry. Banner like this one. And banner, it's going to be a string, right? So it's going to be some kind of a string. Let's call it FTP server, right? So now if we want to see the data type over here, I'm going to say print type, and I'm going to have the type be, you know, for port, for the port variable. So I'll do Control X, Y, and then now my port scanner, Python, oops, Python 3. And there it is. So this is class int. All right. If I want to know what the other one is, I'll just replace port with banner. So like that, Control X, Y. And there it is. Now I know it is a class string, basically. Okay, so this is just, you know, just quickly going through some information. All right, so we have the data types. I also have a list of port numbers over there. Now, let's say that I want to, I have a list. Let's say that I want to add more ports into this list. Right, one quick way to do that is to do list of ports dot append. So in list of ports dot append, and now I'm going to add just, you know, another port. So let's say port 21. It's not there, right? And then now when I print the list, ports are independent because they're independent services. So the reason why I'm doing this, remember, is we're going to do a port scanner, right? So if we're doing a port scanner, we need to have a list of IPs. And then for that list of IPs, we're going to scan the ports. And so we want a list of ports to scan. You see that? So that's what I'm doing. But remember, ports are independent and they represent services. Some services will be open, some will be off. The append is just to add port 21 in here because it's not in here. Okay, so if I do now print, so if I do print over here, and I do list of ports, okay, like that, then now I can see all the ports, right? Even the one I just added. So there it is, port 21. although it was added at the end, right? It's not sorted. So obviously I'm not gonna get into sorting, as that would be like, you know, programming thing, but you guys, I'm sure, can figure it out, how to sort. You know, sorting is actually quite easy with Python, because you can just say, for instance, list of ports dot sort, right? If I do something like that, right? And now you can see the ports are sorted. So there is some, it makes sense to kind of sort the ports, because, you know, as you report information, you want the information to kind of look good, etc. Right, so now that we have the ports, let's see what else we can do. So another thing we might want to have, which is a little, might be also handy, is to have, instead of a list of ports, because we don't know the name, right? So you have to know, okay, this is port 22, port 23. So another approach that we can take is to create, instead of a list, a dictionary. So I'm going to actually add a line here, and I'm going to create a, but this one, instead of calling it list of ports, I'm going to call it services. So services, and this is going to be, oops, open curly bracket, close curly bracket. And now I'm going to use the name of the service as a key. So I'm going to call it FTP, colon, the port number itself, 21. Then I'm going to do the same with the other one. I'm going to say SSH, colon, 22, SMTP, colon, 25. So this is, you know, email. And then finally, let's do one more, HTTP. And what would be the port number for this?
You forgot telnet. It was the middle one.
This one?
No, 23.
Oh, 23. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Good catch. All right, so telnet, oops, sorry. Telnet 23, there we go. And we were doing, so if we follow that logic, we also missed port 80, correct? Because that one was also, the order doesn't matter actually. So here we can do, actually this is HTTP is port 80. So what is that port 443?
It's HTTP secure TLS.
Right. So HTTPS, let's just call it, right? And then I'm going to say 443. So now we have a little dictionary. This allows us to have the service and the port number all together. Okay. And then once we have this, we can print out the services and the port numbers so that we can iterate through them. So let's take a look. So for instance, if I do print services.keys, right, like that, and then also print services.items, right? I can print out all the values, all the key value pairs. So keys and values. So the third one should be print services.values, like that. All right. I also may want to print just an individual service. So just by calling the key, I'm going to say services, and I want telnet. Just like that. All right, so let's run this one. Let's clear. There you go. So I have a list of the keys, I have a list of the items, the key value pairs. I have the values themselves. So I have the port numbers, the service names, the key value pairs. I also have an individual one here, 23, and so on. So I'll pause for a second if you guys need to catch up. All right, and so the last thing we're going to cover today, kind of wrap up, and then I'll just leave it open for you to work on your homework, and we'll continue this next week, is to look at networking. So we're going to, because we're trying to build a port scanner, right? So then I'm going to have networking in here. And now I'm going to say import socket. Now, socket, you probably have already learned about sockets in other classes, right? So the pairs of IPs and port numbers create a socket. And so Python has, amazing libraries to do a lot of things. So we're just going to try. Now, again, remember, this is something that you should only try in your own environment. But we're going to build a socket object. So socket dot socket. And that's going to be an object, probably S would make sense. Okay. Let's see. All right. We're going to set a default timeout. So I'm going to say socket dot set default timeout. And we're going to set it to about 2 seconds. So just, computers are really fast, so not too long. All right. And now let's basically, once we have this, we can connect. So I'm going to do s.connect. Now here we have to provide a socket, of course. Oops, sorry. A socket, so it's gonna be some IP and some port number. So the IP is an integer. Now I'm just gonna use my local host, so 127.0.0.1. And the port number, this machine probably has SSH open, I would guess. So I'm gonna do 22. Now remember, we can put all of this in the list, right? So we can put all of this in these lists. This is something that we're gonna look at next week as we start working through these problems, and then I'll think of something. And probably your homework assignment will just be to make this port scanner nice, like Nmap. That's all I'm going to ask you to do, is just basically try to make this a little bit like Nmap. There's another very powerful library called Scapy. So import Scapy. I'm not sure if it's installed on here. It probably is, because we're using the CVM and it already has it. So this is an extremely powerful library for networking. And so we're going to take a look at that throughout the semester a little bit as well. All right, so now that I have this one, sconnect, I've specified the IP address and the service. All I have to set up is the receiving variable. I'm going to say something like s.recv, which stands for receive. So think about what's happening here. We're sending out a packet from this operating system anywhere in the world, right? So we're creating a packet, an appropriate packet for scanning. And okay, so that's the idea, okay? And we're gonna receive And also we're going to specify the amount of data that we allow to receive. So let's just say 1024 bytes. Okay. And then once I have that, I'm just going to print out answer. There you go. And that's it. So that should work. Let's go ahead and try it out. I'm going to do a clear. We may need to use root privilege here because we're using the interface of the machine, but we'll see. So I'm going to do Python 3 here. And what do you guys think? Do you think it worked or not?
I think so.
Why?
Well, it displayed all the different values on top as FTP, SSH. Then it also displayed them at their numbers. Then it also displayed their values at the bottom. That's what we added, right?
The line that I highlighted. Read it.
Oh, okay. That doesn't look right.
Can you show your code for the default timeout one more time? Because it's going to be an error.
Yeah, I'll do that in a second. But if you take a look at this, I told it to scan port 22, right?
But
It scanned it and it returned to me SSH 2.0, Open SSH, Ubuntu. Do you see that?
Yeah.
This is called the banner. So basically, when you scan a port, it returns this. So it's telling you, hey, great. Thank you for coming here. And by the way, I'm using OpenSSH. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to open the script just to show that it worked. Also, I remind you, I'm recording these, so you can just reference the code there later. Does this make sense, guys? Okay, great. So this would be a port scanner if we scan more than one service and or port number, and we scan more than one IP, obviously, right? So we're going to need to make it into a proper nmap, at least in that regard, and we're going to print out things a little bit more nicely than this. We also are going to specify it with a try catch, etc. But we're going to do that next week, okay? So this is not homework yet. This script is just kind of for you to see, to get a taste of some of the networking things we can do with for sysadmin, such as this, a port scanner. So we'll take a look at this one next week. Oh yeah, the thing I wanted to not forget. So if I Control X, Y here. Later on, also we're going to learn how to look at commands in Linux, right? Other commands. So one command that's very handy that I use all the time, it's netstat-na. So we're going to see this one later in the semester. But basically, this command allows me to take a look at, information about connections in the operating system. However, look, there's so much information in here. It looks kind of confusing, right? So another trick that we're going to learn is we're going to learn how to pipe data. So what that means is that, for instance, I get some output from netstat-na, but I want to process it further. So I'm going to pipe. When I pipe it, then I'm going to say, if you remember, I showed you guys how to search some things with scripts. I also said during that time that we can just use the grep facility. So I'm going to use grep and just say TCP. And what that means is I want to look at all connections, but I only want to see TCP ones. Now, whether that's a connection that's already established, a SYNAC connection, which is not complete yet, or ports that are open. So if you notice, when I hit enter here, I can just quickly scan and see that it says here, oh, it's listening to all these services. And by the way, port 22 is open. Notice port 23 is also open, port 21 and so on. So all these services are potential things that when my scanner runs, should get a reply. But if you look, Apache is not open. So if I, Apache is not there. Now, if I do sudo service Apache to start, fail to start Apache 2 not found. Okay, maybe Apache. Nope. What is Apache now? Oh, maybe it's not, should be installed. Let me see this. Okay, so what's the new one for 2004? Well, according to this, let's just do sudo apt clear. Sudo apt update. So this is always useful whenever you're having trouble with an installation. It's always useful to do the update. So it's doing the update. Right, let's let it for a little while update there. Did it finish? Okay, so it seems like it finished. So now let's try it again. Sudo apt install Apache 2. Okay, so I'm installing it. There it goes. So you guys should be seeing the installation. Progress bar is at 49%. Progress bar is at 91%. There's an error. It says. Well, it's listening on port 80. So I assume it's running. Okay, it's pretty strange. Sudo service Apache to start. It's running. And if I open, so the way to test this is really, I wonder if this thing is. All right, so if I do 127.0.0.1, or actually just localhost. Yep, it's running though. So if I do localhost, it opens the website. So basically that means it is there. And if I do the net stats, these are all this stuff that you see here is because I have this browser open. And then it takes a little bit of time to clear out. But it is listening on port 80. Okay. All right, so we should be able then, another test that we can do is going back to our script. And it was called what? My port scanner. And now we're going to go down here and I'm going to change the port to 80. Right. And then now that I opened it, hopefully I will have a reply. So I'm going to do Control X, Y. My port scanner, Python 3. It's taking a while, so timed out, actually. So that's not good. Let me try another service. Could be that Apache just doesn't want this to happen. So 23 is open also. Yeah, so I was able to get something back from 23. I was able to reach 22. Let's try 21. Yep, this one works. FTP, you can see that. So let me try. I don't know if it was the installation because it came back a little. Okay. I'm gonna remove it. DPK, I'm getting this error here. Cannot create report file access VirtualBox. Bad return status for module build kernel. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at this. If I do port 80 is not there anymore. I open the browser and do localhost. See, it's not working, although it's HTTPS. Still not working. Okay, so that's a good sign. And then if I do now apt install, I'm hoping that that error I'm seeing is just some report that wasn't, but that it is installing correctly. So there it goes. Yeah, it's doing that error there. Okay, so if I do netstat now, port 80 is open. I do this. Refresh. Port 80 is and there it is. So now I have the page again. So for some reason, when I try to scan port 80, it's just not liking it. I'm going to try 443, the HTTPS one. I don't think this one is enabled. Connection refused. So that means the operating system did not have that one, which makes sense because I don't see it in the list. So yeah, 443 is closed for sure. Let's try port 80 again. Could be 8080, but let's try 80. If this doesn't work, I'm going to have to figure out what's going on. I'm not sure. Yeah, see, it's taking a while, and then it says timed out. So I'm not sure what happened, but it's something to do with that installation of Apache. So I'll look into it, or you guys can also look into it, and maybe you'll figure it out. All right, so anyway, that's all for today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now. I'm going to stop the recording.